Officer Emily Carter, a figure you might have once trusted, committed an unthinkable act on what seemed like an ordinary night in Riverside City. A routine traffic stop became the spark igniting a shocking incident. Instead of upholding the law, Officer Carter engaged in abusive and violent behavior towards a black driver. However, this driver was no ordinary citizen. He was Mr. David Jackson, a man of standing and respect within the community. This event transcends a mere individual wrongdoing, stirring up deeply rooted issues of racial discrimination and the abuse of power within the police force. Will the truth be concealed, or will the Jackson family rise to demand justice? Follow this gripping story on Heroic, where the darkest secrets are brought to light and the fight for truth never ends. Night in Riverside draped itself in a cloak of stillness, a quietude common in affluent neighborhoods once the day had drawn to a close. Amber streetlights cast long, narrow streaks across the smooth asphalt. A gentle breeze stirred the aged maple leaves, rustling softly like hushed sighs. The silence was so profound one could clearly hear the faint hum of a refrigerator emanating from a distant house. The Riverside Police Department cruiser, a deep shade of blue, glided along the deserted road, its red and blue lights blinking softly in the night. Inside, Officer Emily Carter sat ramrod straight behind the wheel, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Her night shift had been rather uneventful, a tranquility she didn't particularly mind. The clock on the dashboard read 10:17 p.m., and the flow of traffic on these streets had significantly thinned. Then, as the cruiser approached an intersection, Emily noticed a jet-black sedan slowly entering her field of vision. A luxurious car, gleaming, with a powerful and elegant design, reminiscent of the vehicles often parked in front of powerful executives' offices. Every detail of the car seemed perfect, from its glossy black paint to the gleaming chrome accents. Only one thing caught Emily's attention. The car had not signaled when making a left turn. A minor traffic violation, insignificant perhaps, but in Emily's mind, a thought flashed. The law is the law, and it applies to everyone, regardless of what they drive or where they live. She lightly pressed the accelerator, the cruiser slowly pulling away from the curb, emitting a very faint whine as it picked up speed. The stark white headlights shone directly on the black sedan, a quick flash of blue and white. The sedan's red brake lights illuminated, and the car gradually pulled over to the side of the road. Stopping smoothly, Emily turned off the siren, the cruiser's engine humming softly before falling silent. She observed the sedan for a moment in her rearview mirror, assessing the situation. Then she deliberately opened her car door, a soft click echoing in the still night. One hand rested casually on the holster at her hip, her fingers almost touching the grip of her firearm. Her other hand adjusted the microphone clip to her lapel. The cool night air seeped through her thin uniform shirt. The street remained deserted, only Emily's steady breathing and the soft crunch of her footsteps on the sidewalk as she approached the sedan broke the silence. The streetlight cast her shadow long and stretched out on the pavement. As she neared the driver's side window, the power window lowered slowly, almost deliberately revealing the occupant inside. And then Emily saw him. A black man, around 45 years old. His face was stern, with sharp, angular features. A neatly trimmed goatee framed his face. He wore a sophisticated charcoal gray suit, a burgundy silk tie standing out against a crisp white shirt. He exuded an air of confidence and composure, the kind of person accustomed to power and respect. His hands rested casually on the leather-wrapped steering wheel, his long fingers barely moving. His gaze was fixed straight ahead, showing no signs of nervousness or fear. A vague unease stirred within Emily. The way he sat there, so unusually calm, his affluent and confident demeanor, it triggered something within her. License and registration, Emily's voice stated, colder and more decisive than necessary. Her tone shattered the night's tranquility, echoing off the walls of the silent houses. The man turned his head, his eyes meeting Emily's. He didn't flinch, didn't seem surprised, just a calm gaze, almost assessing. Then he deliberately reached towards the glove compartment, his movements slow and controlled. The man retrieved a black leather wallet, his movements slow and deliberate. The small flashlight clipped to Emily's belt cast a faint beam across the fine grain of the leather's surface. He opened the wallet, his fingers briefly brushing against the inner compartments before extracting his driver's license. A thin plastic card, clearly displaying his photograph and personal information. Emily reached out and took it. Her eyes quickly scanned the name, David Jackson. The address printed on the license belonged to an affluent neighborhood not far away. His age matched her initial estimate. Everything seemed in order, but this very orderliness only amplified the unease within Emily. Vehicle registration, she requested, her tone remaining cold. David Jackson showed no sign of fluster or annoyance. He opened his wallet again, this time pulling out a folded piece of paper, off-white in color. The paper felt thick and substantial, likely of good quality. Emily took it and unfolded it. It was the registration for the gleaming black sedan. The owner's name, David Jackson. Emily stood there, under the yellowish glow of the streetlight, holding two perfectly valid documents. There was no logical reason for suspicion. Yet, her gut told her something was wrong. The way this man was acting, his almost unnerving calmness, it made her feel like she was being subtly challenged. Another car sped past on the road, its headlights momentarily blinding Emily. She squinted, then refocused on David Jackson. He remained seated behind the wheel, his hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, his gaze directed straight ahead, as if patiently waiting. "Do you know why I stopped you, Mr. Jackson?" Emily asked, trying to keep any hint of her irritation out of her voice. "The officer said I didn't signal for the turn back there," David Jackson replied, his voice still deep and as composed as before. "That's right," Emily stated, emphasizing the point. "That's a traffic violation. I apologize if there was some confusion," David Jackson said, a slight pause in his tone. "I'm certain I used my signal." Emily remained silent for a moment. She looked down at the driver's license in her hand, then back at David Jackson. There was nothing in his expression that suggested he was lying or trying to hide something. But that very casual confidence made her suspicious. "Are you in a hurry?" Emily asked abruptly. "No," David Jackson replied, giving a slight shake of his head. "I'm on my way home." "Step out of the car," Emily commanded, her voice brooking no argument. "I have a few more questions for you." David Jackson's expression didn't change. He simply let out a soft sigh, a very quiet exhalation, almost inaudible. Then he deliberately unfastened his seatbelt, opened the car door, and stepped out. He was slightly taller than Emily had anticipated when he was seated, and his broad build was more apparent under the streetlight. He stood straight, his hands hanging loosely at his sides, his gaze calmly meeting Emily's. There was no hint of resistance or anxiety. Emily took a step back, observing him from head to toe. Then she gestured towards the rear of her patrol car. "Walk over there. Place your hands on the hood of my vehicle." David Jackson complied without a word of protest. He walked slowly towards the patrol car, placing both hands flat on its cool, dark surface. His posture remained upright, showing no sign of submission or fear. Emily approached him, maintaining a safe distance. Her eyes scanned his every movement. Then she reached for her radio, her voice low and controlled. "Dispatch. This is Unit 14B. I have a suspicious vehicle stopped for further investigation at the intersection of Elm Street and Oak Avenue. Requesting a backup unit to the scene." She waited for the response from the radio, a growing sense of unease settling in her stomach. The suspicion she had just reported was, in reality, nothing more than her own discomfort and unfounded doubts. But she had gone too far to turn back now. The response crackled over the radio, a female dispatcher's voice cold and detached. "Received. Backup unit en route." Emily switched off the radio, her gaze unwavering from David Jackson. He remained still, hands pressed against the patrol car's hood, his posture unchanged. His unnerving composure began to unsettle Emily. She couldn't understand it. How could someone like him be so calm, especially after being ordered out of his vehicle and labeled suspicious? The headlights of the backup unit flickered at the end of the street, the vehicle slowly approaching and stopping behind Emily's cruiser. Two officers emerged, their movements swift and professional. One was a young white officer whose name Emily couldn't recall. The other was Officer Reynolds, her regular partner. Reynolds looked at Emily with a puzzled expression, then glanced at David Jackson standing silently by Emily's patrol car. "What's the situation, Carter?" Reynolds asked, his voice low enough for only Emily to hear. "I stopped this vehicle for failing to signal," Emily replied, her tone slightly strained. "The driver seems incooperative." Reynolds raised an eyebrow, looking at David Jackson again. "Incooperative how?" Before Emily could answer, David Jackson spoke slowly, his voice as calm as a still lake. "Officer, I have provided all the requested documentation. I am merely questioning why I am being considered incooperative." Reynolds looked at Emily, a large question mark etched on his face. A flicker of embarrassment ran through Emily. What she was doing seemed increasingly illogical. "I wanted to ask him a few more questions," Emily said, trying to maintain her authoritative tone. "Just routine procedure." Reynolds nodded, but his eyes remained questioning. The younger officer stood silently, observing the unfolding scene. Emily turned back to face David Jackson. She stepped a little closer to him, maintaining enough distance to feel safe but still projecting control. "Mr. Jackson," Emily said, her voice stern, "I just want to clarify a few things. Are you absolutely certain you signaled for that left turn?" "Absolutely certain," David Jackson replied, his eyes meeting Emily's directly. Without flinching, "I am always careful with such things." "Then why didn't I see it?" Emily asked, a hint of provocation entering her voice. David Jackson paused for a moment, as if carefully considering his response. "Perhaps the officer simply didn't notice," he said, his voice retaining its remarkable composure. This response, though not outwardly offensive, made Emily feel subtly mocked. Her patience began to fray. "Hands out front," Emily ordered abruptly. David Jackson frowned slightly, but complied. He slowly extended both hands forward, palms down. Emily scrutinized them, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. "Turn around," she continued to command. David Jackson complied again, his movements slow and without any sign of annoyance. Emily stepped closer behind him, her eyes scanning his spine and waistline. Then she raised her hands, preparing to conduct a quick pat down. And that was when David Jackson spoke softly, his voice deep and clear, cutting through the tense silence. "Officer Carter, do you have a warrant to search me?" This question, delivered calmly but with an undeniable challenge, caused Emily's hands to freeze in midair. Reynolds and the younger officer also fell silent, their eyes fixed on Emily. She felt an invisible pressure weighing down on her shoulders. She knew her next move would be closely scrutinized, and she had a growing sense that she might have gone too far. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Emily stood there, Chief Jackson's driver's license still trembling in her hand. Her gaze was fixed on his composed face, trying to decipher any hint of anger or reproach. But his expression remained solemn. Only his eyes held a deep, probing look, as if searching the depths of her soul. Reynolds cleared his throat softly, breaking the taut atmosphere. "Chief Jackson," he began, his voice hesitant. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." David Jackson raised a hand slightly, cutting Reynolds off. His eyes remained locked on Emily. "Officer Carter," his voice was deep and clear, "do you recall the procedure for conducting a traffic stop and verifying identification?" Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. Yes, Chief Jackson." "And did you adhere to that procedure in this instance?" His question was sharp as a knife. Emily lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze any longer. "No, not entirely, Chief Jackson." Her voice barely escaped her lips. David Jackson remained silent for a long moment, then let out a soft sigh. A breath so quiet yet it seemed to echo in the stillness of the night. "Officer Reynolds," he said, turning to Emily's partner, "please ensure this entire incident is documented in a report. I want a full account on my desk first thing in the morning." Reynolds nodded quickly, his face grave. The younger officer remained silent, seemingly still reeling from the revelation. Then David Jackson turned back to Emily. The probing look in his eyes was gone, replaced by a disappointment tinged with sadness. "Officer Carter," he said, his voice softer now but still carrying its inherent authority, "I am deeply disappointed. Your actions tonight demonstrated not only a lack of professionalism but also raised serious questions about your judgment and your restraint." Emily gripped the driver's license tightly, a wave of shame and regret washing over her, choking her. She knew she was wrong. Terribly wrong. not only because the man she had treated with such arrogance was her superior, but because she had allowed her personal biases to dictate her actions, betraying the fundamental principles of a police officer. Chief Jackson. Emily tried to explain, but the words caught in her throat. Any excuse at this point would sound weak and meaningless. David Jackson raised his hand again, silencing her. Report to the precinct. Officer Carter, turn in your badge and firearm to the desk sergeant. You are hereby suspended from duty, effective immediately, pending a final decision from Internal Affairs. His words struck Emily like a physical blow. She felt a tremor run through her entire body. Suspension. It was the worst possible outcome for a police officer. The career she had painstakingly built over years now teetered on the brink of complete collapse. All because of a single, ill-conceived encounter. Chief Jackson, please, just give me a chance, Emily pleaded, her voice breaking with unshed tears. David Jackson looked at her for a long moment, his expression unyielding. A chance is earned through actions, Officer Carter, not through empty words. Now, follow my orders. Without another word, Emily lowered her head and silently returned the driver's license to David Jackson. Her hands were cold and trembling as she unpinned her police badge from her chest. A heavy, hollow feeling consumed her. She turned and walked back towards her patrol car, acutely aware of the gazes of Reynolds and the younger officer following her. As Emily drove the cruiser back to the precinct in the quiet of the night, everything around her seemed bleak and hopeless. The streetlights cast blurred streaks across the windshield, like tears streaming down the invisible face of her regret. She knew this night would be long, and the days to come even longer. The price for a moment of impulsiveness and the blindness of prejudice would likely be far greater than she had ever imagined. The days following that fateful night weighed heavily on Emily, like invisible chains binding her. The indefinite suspension notice lay on her empty desk, a silent indictment of the foolishness and prejudice that had guided her actions. Sleep eluded her, leaving her mind to replay the haunting slow-motion film, Chief Jackson's cold gaze, Reynolds' disappointed look, and the humiliating sensation of her badge, once a symbol of her career and pride, being stripped away. The internal investigation was rigorous and unforgiving. Emily made no attempt to justify her actions or seek sympathy. She knew her behavior was indefensible. Her statements were cold and brief, simply acknowledging the undeniable misconduct. The final outcome of the investigation was announced a week later. Emily Carter was stripped of her police powers and terminated from the Riverside Police Department. This decision was based on her severe abuse of authority, disrespectful conduct towards a superior officer, and, most significantly, her unwarranted act of aggression against a citizen. The career she had dedicated her young adulthood to building had vanished in a single moment of unchecked impulse. Chief David Jackson had a brief, private meeting with Emily before her final departure from the precinct. His eyes were cold and distant, devoid of the disappointed sadness he had shown that night. "You have lost more than just your job, Officer Carter," he said, his voice like ice. "You have lost the trust of this community and the respect of your honorable colleagues. Take a long look at yourself and what you have done." There were no more excuses, no second chances. Emily silently gathered her few personal belongings amidst the chilling silence of her former colleagues. Their gazes held no pity, only alienation and deep disappointment. Stepping out of the police station for the last time, Emily felt like an outcast. The darkness of regret and shame enveloped her. She understood that the price for her prejudice and blindness was not just a ruined career, but the loss of trust and respect from those around her. Emily's story serves as a stark warning about the abuse of power and the immeasurable damage of deeply ingrained biases. Justice, at times, demands harsh lessons so that mistakes are never repeated. If this story resonated with you and you believe the message of justice and respect deserves to be spread, please hit like and share this video. Have you ever witnessed or experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments below. Let's build a strong community together, speaking out for fairness. Don't forget to subscribe to the Heroic channel for more meaningful stories. Your support is invaluable.